All right, Arkham Horror, the card game. What is it? Well, it's a living card game, which is the model that Fantasy Flight has been using, where you buy a core set and then large box expansions that give you additional content for the game, and then ongoing smaller packs of 60 cards that provide different options for deck building with mini adventures, either one-offs in the smaller set or long-running stories over, I believe, the 6 chapters of each cycle. We've seen this in many other games, Netrunner, Lord of the Rings, all the living card games that they do. But what is the game when you play? It's different than a lot of card games. This one is cooperative, and for me is a big hit because I play games with my wife quite a bit, and she prefers the cooperative games because she usually beats me, and then I have to be a little salty about it. So we just avoid that whole thing and play cooperative games a lot. So it comes across really well in that way. But the other great part of a cooperative game is it can also be played solo. So if you don't want to play a video game, if you don't want to watch TV or do whatever, you want to play a game but you don't have anybody to play with, you can play this game solo, which is fantastic. And I keep a character sheet running as I go through the adventures. So it plays like with mechanics that you'd be very familiar with in other card games. You're using resources here to do effects on the cards, to move between locations, which is different. Card games don't usually have locations in them, but in this game you are a physical character moving around. And the randomness of this deck here are the events that can come out as you adventure and do things on your on your turn. These cards come out, and it really can take an adventure that you've previously done and turn it on its head depending on the order of those cards. So what is it? It's a card game like many other card games, but there is an RPG overlay, a role-playing game infused into this card game that can be played alone or cooperatively with another or additional people if you get additional starter boxes. And it's really a unique experience in the world of card games. I tend not to play competitive card games, living or otherwise, because I got burned out on Magic a long time ago. I didn't like the scene, and that's back from when I was a kid, and it's just not my cup of tea. Great for those who like it, but it's just not for me. However, a game like this is based on having fun working together with someone, and you are being told a story as you play. And there are a lot of games that focus on narrative. I think this game and Time Stories are probably the two games that come to mind when I think about narrative in games. How do you tell a player a story? And if a story is what you're looking for, this is the game that will tell it to you. So gameplay. How does the game play? Well, this is where the game absolutely shines. If you've played the Lord of the Rings living card game, you may be a little similar with how the game, where it came from, kind of its roots, but what the living card game for Lord of the Rings did is only the beginning of what Arkham Horror has done. So the ability to play together against this deck in this setting cooperatively with another player is true in this game as it is with Lord of the Rings, where this is a real departure and it's the next evolution in this style of game. is your characters level up between scenarios, and there is a consistent story that your actions affect as you go through. So if you lose the first scenario in Night of the Zealot, for example, the campaign's not over. You are pointed towards one of three endings that were possible outcomes for the story, and those events, which are described to you in a narrative form inside the campaign book, will lead you down a path of, well, if you're losing, continued failure or the benefits of success, and just build a story. And the first time I played through, I did not do so hot, and by the time I got to the end, I got a failure at the very end of the campaign, which I had very much earned. But I'm leaking over into theme a bit here, but they're so intertwined, the gameplay and the theme, that it's difficult to kind of separate them. But as far as the mechanics of the game, over here we could take a look at the round sequence, the mythos phase, the investigation phase, enemy phase, and upkeep phase. The gameplay, after you play slowly through 2 or 3 turns, you've got it. It goes quick. It's intuitive. The cards, especially the location, agenda, and act cards, do a lot to kind of just steer you down the path. You'll do minor rule checks going forward, but you really only do a lot of heavy rules checking in the very beginning, which Fantasy Flight's reference rule set makes so much easier to process when you're learning a new game. But the game itself is really set up to lead you down the path and make the transition as you learn the game easier and easier. So, and some of the great things they've done is they've added locations in this game, which is really exceptional, that you don't see in a lot of these kind of games. You saw it a little bit in Lord of the Rings, LCG, but in this, you are moving between locations, and it's not a passive, well, I need to go here and clear this area and then go here. When you get into later scenarios, there's one that has a 3x3, so 9 locations set up that you can travel pretty freely between, pulling random cards, getting random effects, and every time you play it, the scenario just comes out differently because you are effectively playing a card game associated with a map up here. So the gameplay is really quite good, and does a lot for the theme, which I'll get to momentarily. All right, let's talk about components for a minute. Here, obviously, is the box that the game comes in. The artwork, as with all of the Fantasy Flight artwork, especially for the Cthulhu Mythos stuff, is just phenomenal. They actually released a coffee table book of a lot of this artwork, and it's absolutely gorgeous. We have the core rule book, and then the reference, and then the Night of the Zealot, which is the first series of games that you can play out of the box. Over here I have all of my extra cards. My game has kind of grown out of the box at this point. I have the 2 standalone scenarios plus the Dunwich Horror expansion and the 4 chapter packs that have come out at this point. But I kind of have a mock set up for the first game here, and I'll just kind of run through what the components are. The artwork is great, very immersive. Nothing surprising there. So up here we have, I'll start from left to right. We have the agenda card and the act cards, which are very cool. They read like a story as you're going through. I'll talk about that more in gameplay, but it does a lot to make it feel as if you're inside of a Lovecraftian story. There's also the resource card over here for the scenario, which helps to establish difficulty. And then all of the main monsters, traps, events that happen each turn that you'll turn up. Here are all the locations that you can travel between during the adventure. So, for example, here, the hallway, you'll notice right up here, the hallway has this mark right here, this square with a red background, determining what the location is, and then at the bottom, all of the locations that can be traveled to from this location. So, for example, here you can go to any of these three, which are the parlor, the cellar, and the attic, and then from those locations you can only travel back to the hallway. So pretty intuitive. Works well during gameplay because you'll have to move around and take part in different activities. Just a cheat card for round sequence. The actual deck. These are sleeves that I have from the old Call of Cthulhu living card game. Let's get the glare off there. But the different abilities, assets, skills, events, and even weaknesses that your character can have throughout the game. And this is my character here. They come with a special ability. There's several in the box, and you get more with the expansion. And the character actually levels up throughout play. And these are his resource tokens, which are the currency used in the game to achieve the different effects on these cards. And then over here are the different tokens that come in the game. The resource tokens, health tokens, sanity tokens, and doom tokens in the game. So all of it's very good quality. And here's a little bag that I pulled out to keep track of to randomize my chaos token pulls. So when you have to do special events, instead of rolling a die, you randomly pull a token out of the bag or whatever you happen to be using, and add the result to the effect. So overall, the components for the game are exceptional. What really makes or breaks a card game is the level of the artwork. It's how immersive it gets in the gameplay, of course. But as far as feeling like you're drawn into something, the artwork is imperative. And no surprise, once again, Fantasy Flight does a fantastic job with this. The work they put into their Cthulhu games is evident, and it comes through, and they really outdid themselves with the components to this piece. And a lot of the artwork is not recycled from previous games, and some of the expansions they've done some recycling, it appears, but I believe the base set, it appeared to me as if the artwork was in fact new. And I have all of the Arkham horror sets, Eldritch horror, and a lot of the original Call of Cthulhu living card game. So I've seen a lot of the artwork, and this appears to be new. So theme in this game, I think I've said it repeatedly at this point, really comes through with the way the game is designed and the way the cards lead you through. I don't want to do any spoilers, but you literally, during a scenario, read these two together to see what is happening, and as the story develops, you turn these cards and it keeps telling you a story, which is Fantasy Flight's brand of Lovecraft. If you're a Lovecraft fan, there's a difference between the games and the stories, because in the game, there's a little bit more hope. You have the ability to do a bit more than the characters and the stories were able to do. However, for really the first time, I feel like they are getting in the neighborhood of Arkham, so to speak. I have the first hobby board game I ever actually got was as a gift from my wife, Arkham Horror. I expanded that to all of its pieces, and I also play Eldritch Horror. I had the Call of Cthulhu living card game. I've mentioned all this previously, but I also have lots of non-Fantasy Flight Lovecraft games. Oh, and I've left out Elder Sign. Elder Sign is probably, with the exception of this game, it's hard to compare the two because they're different experiences, but Elder Sign is also a fantastic game. But all of those other games have a feel very much like you are Indiana Jones in a Lovecraft story. You're able to do things that Lovecraft probably would not have been down with himself. You're fighting against these cosmic horrors and sometimes winning. This game doesn't really do that. I mean, there's a degree, but there is much more of that sense of hopelessness that Lovecraft was interested in getting across in his cosmic horror. Things happen through the narrative that you're just saying, "Oh my God, what is going on here? How am I going to be able to do this?" And there are literally scenarios. I don't want to give away which ones where I just ran. I just ran away from the danger that was in front of me because I knew I couldn't stand up to it. And the only option I had was to fight or flee. And I chose to flee. Because when I tried to fight, it didn't go so well for me. So as far as theme, I feel like this is one of the first games based in the Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos to really start to grasp what Lovecraft was communicating. The sense that you're up against forces you cannot possibly win, and that sometimes the best thing to do is get out of Dodge. That being said, the theme comes through wonderfully in this game. If you're looking for a game where you're the over-the-top hero looking like Indiana Jones, this isn't it. This is a game for the Lovecraft fan that enjoys the cosmic horror of the situation, rather than fighting against Cthulhu and pretending you have a chance. So wonderful with the theme.